You know, whenever you're learning a new language, you eventually run into a grammar rule that just feels off, right? It doesn't really connect to anything you know in English, but it seems to be everywhere. But what if that one tricky rule wasn't a problem, but actually a key, a kind of multi-tool that once you get the hang of it, just unlocks everything? Well, today, we are talking about the ultimate Swiss Army knife of German grammar, the dative case. So to get us started, let's just look at this super normal, everyday sentence. Ich wasche mir das Gesicht. It means, simply, I wash my face. But if you've been learning German for a little while, your brain is probably telling you that something is, well, a little bit strange here. And that strangeness leads us right to our big question. Why on earth is it mir, which means to me or for me, and not mich, which just means me? It almost sounds like the speaker is saying, I am washing the face for myself. And you know what? That's kind of exactly what's happening. This isn't just some boring rule to memorize, it's a puzzle, and we're going to solve it by looking at the four main jobs of the dative case. Okay, let's get into job number one for our grammatical multi-tool. This first function pops up all the time with reflexive actions, things you do to yourself. I like to think of it as the bumping rule. Okay, check this out. On the left, we've got a simple sentence. Ich ziehe mich an. I get myself dressed. Here, myself, or mich, is the direct object. It's in the accusative case. Simple enough. But now look what happens on the right when we add another object to the sentence. Eine Jacke, a jacket. All of a sudden, the jacket is the direct object. It's the thing being acted on. And since that direct object spot, the accusative slot, is now taken, our little reflexive pronoun, mich, gets bumped over into the dative case, and it becomes mir. And here's the key thing to get. That little bump completely changes the pronoun's job. It's not the thing being directly acted on anymore. Now it's the indirect object. It's the person who receives or benefits from the action. You're putting the jacket on yourself. You are washing the face that belongs to you. See how that logic clicks into place? All right, let's grab the next tool from our kit. The dative case isn't just about physical actions. It's also super important for talking about personal feelings and conditions, especially when you're using adjectives. You will hear this phrase constantly in German-speaking countries. Das ist mir egal. Casually, it just means I don't care or whatever. But if you translate it literally, you can see the German logic at work. That is irrelevant to me. That data is mir is what tells you who is experiencing this feeling. And that really is the core idea here. The dative case acts like a pin that attaches an adjective to a specific person. It answers the question, for whom is this true? So you wouldn't just say, it is cold. You'd say, mir ist kalt. It is cold for me. It's not just expensive in general. It might be too expensive for him. Ihm too teuer. And this is a super common pattern. Just look at this list. Words like expensive, hot, cold, thankful, helpful, they all use the dative to show who's being affected. It's a really fundamental way of expressing a personal experience in German. All right, on to job number 3. So far we've seen some pretty logical systems, right? The bumping rule, personalizing adjectives, but sometimes you just gotta memorize the rules. And there are some German verbs that are just hardwired to demand the dative case, no matter what. Now, this slide breaks down what is probably the most famous and maybe trickiest of these verbs, gefallen, which means to like. See, in English we say, I like the car. I'm the subject, I'm doing the liking. But in German, the whole logic is flipped on its head. The car is the subject of the sentence, and the car is doing the action. It is pleasing to me. And because that action is directed to me has to be in the dative. Thus, Auto gefällt mir. It's a total shift in perspective, but once you see it, it makes perfect sense. And gefallen is not alone in this little club. Other really common verbs like helfen, to help, danken, to thank, and gehören, to belong to, always take the dative. It just makes sense when you think about it. You help to someone, you give thanks to someone, and something belongs to someone. The dative is baked right into the meaning. Okay, time for the grand finale. The final and maybe the most well-known job of the dative case. We've seen it with verbs, with adjectives, and now we get to its famous partnership with prepositions. So our source material says there are 16 dative prepositions in total. And your first reaction is probably 16? You've got to be kidding me. It sounds completely impossible, like something you'd have to just grind into your brain with flashcards for weeks. But don't worry, there's a trick. And this trick comes from this wonderful little story. A student in class apparently had this amazing mnemonic device and told their professor, "Hey, I have a song for the dative prepositions." And here they are. These are the 8 most common dative prepositions, and they will cover you in the vast majority of situations. And that student's song? It turns out you can sing this list perfectly to the tune of the Blue Danube Waltz. No, seriously, try it. Aus, außer, bei, mit, von, seit, nach, zu. It works. And once you hear it, you'll never forget it. So, there we have it. 4 really distinct, really important jobs. Let's take a quick step back and see how all these pieces of the puzzle snap together to give us a full picture of this grammatical powerhouse. So next time you feel overwhelmed by the dative case, I just want you to remember this number, 4. At the end of the day, all that complexity really boils down to just 4 main jobs. 4 key functions that, once you learn to spot them, make understanding German sentences so much easier. So let's recap them one more time. Let's look at the tools on our Swiss Army knife. First, you've got the bumping rule for those reflexive verbs. Second, you have expressing personal feelings and states with adjectives. Third, that special list of verbs, the rule breakers that always demand it. And fourth, that musical group of prepositions that you can literally waltz your way into remembering. That's it. That is the core of the dative case. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. We started out looking at the dative case like it was this weird, difficult rule. But as we've seen, it's actually a key that unlocks a much deeper, more logical way of seeing the language. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if the things that seem like the hardest parts of learning something new aren't obstacles at all? What if they're actually the very keys we need to understand the whole system?